Welcome to Musician Profile, celebrating racial diversity. This is ICSOM's monthly series of short videos to feature orchestra musicians of color. I'm Stephen Leifer. I'm a horn player in the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra and ICSOM alternate delegate. This month, we're chatting with Francisco Joubert Bernard, who plays second bassoon in the Louisville Orchestra. And I actually am kind of proud of myself that I said Louisville and not Louisville. I've been around the block a little bit.
That's pretty good.
Not bad, huh?
Yeah.
Originally from Puerto Rico, Francisco completed his bachelor's degree at the Conservatorio de Música de Puerto Rico and has a master's from the Yale School of Music. Before joining the Louisville Orchestra, he was a fellow with the New World Symphony. He's also an active educator working with the National Youth Orchestra, and he teaches at the University of Louisville. Francisco, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is
Should we get right
awesome.
to the questions?
Yeah, sure. Let's go. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
Do you recall the first time you ever heard an orchestra, and what can you tell us about it?
Well, the first time I heard an orchestra, I'm not really entirely sure the first time because I don't know if what you mean by that it's either on a like on an audio sense, in a present sense, like did I go to a concert? Did I
Yeah, let's
hear
say
it on a
live. Let's say
recording?
the first time you heard a live
Live,
performance.
I think it might have been once I got a little bit more serious about bassoon. I mean, the first time I remember being like struck that, oh, I want to do that, was I was beginning my bassoon journey, and my dad got me to this it was like a youth orchestra concert, and I saw some of my colleagues there, like some people that I knew and all that, and I was just fascinated by it. And I was like, wow, I want to do that. Like it'll be fun being there. So that was the first time I remember being shocked by an orchestral experience.
Shocked, how so? What kind of an impression?
Well, it was more like I want to be there. Like I don't know what do I need to be there? I just
Mm,
didn't know. It was just all hopes of, yeah, this is exciting, playing the bassoon in orchestra. How would that feel? Like
yeah, sure.
thoughts of curiosity more than anything.
Right.
Like
So,
I don't remember the quality of this experience. It wasn't like I was blown away by the sound, but it was more of the curiosity. Then later on, there's a few concerts that I remember being like amazed by the sound of the orchestra and what I heard, which was kind of cool.
right. So I've just spoken to you for the International Musician for this month's cover story. So I know the answer to this question. For those who don't, what led you to the bassoon?
It's a very long story, but technically just video games. It started there. I wasn't really like, and it's funny because my parents would tell me all the time, like, we would have never thought you were gonna go for music,
Mm,
because I never showed any interest really. It was my dad used to play the trombone in a National Guard, and I was surrounded by music, mostly like popular music, but I never showed interest of like, yeah, I want to play an instrument, even though my dad practiced all the time. Um, but then after playing video games, that's where I started getting the sense of, oh, cool, I like this. It's very repetitive, so it sticks to you. And then um yeah, the first time I was really interested in music, this is way before starting bassoon, because there's the separation of what made me want to start bassoon and what made me start in music.
mm.
And for music was like, my dad had this little piano, and I was bored. I had played some games, I was just bored, and I just took this little piano and I started playing with it, and I had a video game in the background, just playing, the music repeatedly. And then I just started playing with the piano, and then I noticed that it matched some of the sounds that were coming from the video game. I was like, wait. And I was like, I just could emulate this thing that was happening on the video game. And I was like, wait, this is kind of cool. Because this
Eureka.
was like the first time I realized like music does not have to be a specific thing. You know, like for me back in the day, I just remember, and maybe this is just being dumb, but like for me, it was like music is either pop music or that's it. You know, like for me, even a movie soundtrack was not music for
Mhm.
some reason. And then that's where the connection started, where I was like, oh, I could play this video game sounds on an instrument. And I know this sounds super like naive, but that I remember just that connection. And then yeah, and then that's where I started the journey. Then I got obsessed with the bassoon. Um, Once I like saw it and I was just fascinated by it. I just didn't know what it was because in Puerto Rico there's so little bassoonists. So I saw this instrument and I was in this phase where I was obsessed with different instruments, and I've recently learned what an oboe was, and I was like, wow, that's cool. But then I saw the bassoon and I was just immediately obsessed. Just starstruck. And then I made some research, found what it was. Then I heard some recordings because at this point when I saw it, I didn't know how it sounded.
Right.
But then I just made some research, heard how it sounded, and I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And then I tied it up to the video games where I was like, I've been hearing this sound all my life. I just didn't know what it was. I thought
Wow.
it was just some like digital sound, you know? So I mean, of course, it sounds, it doesn't sound as accurate on the video game, but I knew that's what the sound was entailed to be. Um, and yeah, and then it just kept at it, and it's been a long journey. I mean, I've talked about how I made my first mock bassoon. Um, and yeah, and here we are. It started as a hobby, and now it's a career.
Right. Well, it's often how it goes.
Yeah.
So, from video games to discovering the bassoon to building one out of PVC pipes to all of a
Mhm.
sudden where you are now, what was there a particular moment or experience you had that made you decide you wanted to play in a symphony orchestra for a living?
Yeah, I don't know if like playing in a symphony orchestra for a living was ever a thought necessarily like that I had, but I remember the time where I was like, I want to do this. I don't know where it's gonna lead me to, but this is what I want to do. And that's when I started playing the bassoon more actively in my school, and because I was the only bassoonist, everyone was calling me. All of the band teachers were like, "Hey, can play with the bassoon with me or with our band?" And I was playing the elementary school or band, the middle school band, and the advanced band, and just noticing how useful I was being at that point, it just gave me a sense of like maybe I there's something to this.
Hmm.
And that's where I really just stopped playing trumpet, and I just dedicated myself to bassoon, and that's where I really decided to I'm gonna go to music school for
Okay.
this.
Right.
Yeah.
So, knowing what you know now and looking back on your days in music school, if you could give a piece of advice to yourself in your student days, what would you say?
I would just say like just don't be too hard on myself, like I know it's hard to like envision a world where me getting that advice would have gotten me where I am today, because I feel like also that's what helped me.
Hmm.
So like focus and like attention to detail and all this stuff, but I feel like it came to a point where it was not being helpful. But I think it was not I got to that point where I had already reaped all the benefits of it. And I
Sure.
know this sounds like kind of toxic, but it's now after even getting the job, it's more of repairing all that
Yeah. Yeah.
has damage.
I get it. Yep.
Yeah, so
I
but I
totally.
would say that I would just say it to my younger self, like, just a mistake is a mistake, it'll happen, just move on.
Right. All right. Wrapping up. Final question. Why do you think a series like this might be especially important these days, right now?
I think it's important, specifically for other people, minority. I mean, I'm a double minority at this point. Um, but I feel like a lot of people can identify, like when you see someone like yourself doing something you didn't think it was possible. I think it gives you hope of like, if they did it, I could do it. And I've gotten some feedback like that before where
Mm.
other bassoonists had been like, "Oh, I saw you playing this," and I was like, "Damn, I want to do that."
Yeah,
So I feel like this type of conversations, I that's why I like to be honest in the way I talk about my career and my path, because I want people more to relate if they can to my story. Like, I didn't grow up like most of my colleagues are, like, grew up with musical parents. Like, they listen to classical music from an early age. um I don't think that was my case, and I just want to showcase, like, even if that's not your case, you can still make it. And by make it, I mean, like, you could just have a career in music.
for sure.
Because I think there are many careers in music. I don't think like orchestral has to be the end all be all career in music, but yeah.
Absolutely. Anything else you'd like to share that you would maybe like ICSOM listeners to know about you or your journey to getting to where you are now?
Um, no, I mean, it's I have to say, to a certain extent, I'm kind of lucky of my path being kind of straightforward. Um, I know there's a lot of variables and a lot of things that, of course, I did my effort, but also I'm lucky that I had certain teachers on my path. And that's why I believe, like, if I can be one of those teachers, that'd be great, for at least one student. Like, that's good for me.
Absolutely. Terrific. All right. Well, then that wraps it up for us. Thanks so much for sitting down with us, letting ICSOM musicians get to learn a little bit more about you. And for those of you in other ICSOM orchestras, thanks a lot for watching. See you next month.